morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
Well, this week you'll meet a former bronc rider and a rancher who has now become a best-selling author. And I gotta tell you, his books are the kind you just can't put down. David Griffith stops in to talk about his rodeo days, some of the legends he rode with, his ranch on the Northern Range, and what motivated him to write the spellbinding, page-turning Western novel.
He's a rodeo cowboy, approaching the end of his career. He struggles with his marriage, and then his best friend is kidnapped by a Mexican drug cartel.
On the Rangeland News, trade and tariffs dominate the discussion, but we'll look at ranch expenses and income, too.
Still bringing $16 a hundredweight less than a year ago.
Nearly every morning, if we have time, Billy and I walk up the usually quiet country road that runs by our place, and lately we've been coming back with a bag full of discarded beer cans and bottles. And Baxter Black talks about the same kind of thoughtless folks who, in their ignorance, they just toss this stuff right out their vehicle windows.
Sign on the highway should read, "This stretch of public land is kept clean by a local ranch family with better things to do."
And as always, a fine piece of cowboy poetry, our classic Song of the West, and David Griffith talks about his rodeo days right after Tom Cole and a pretty appropriate opening song.
You see him in the morning, just a little after sunrise. He'll saddle up and ride into the sky. Then he stops down by the lake shore where he sees that he's been looking for in the green grass that's growing stirrup high. Just a little herd of cattle grazing in the sunlight. He always dreams someday on this land he should ride home for breakfast, but maybe he won't. You never can tell, he's a rodeo man. All through the week he works on the farm. By Friday he's on the road again, with an old pickup truck that has seen its better days. Out on the rodeo trail it has no end. He's out most every day, working in the field. He's the kind of man that you can understand. He might just ride into the hills and maybe he won't. You never can tell, he's a rodeo man. All through the week he works on the farm. By Friday he's on the road again, with an old pickup truck that has seen its better days. Out on the rodeo trail it has no end. All through the week he works on the farm. By Friday he's on the road again, with an old pickup truck that has seen its better days. Out on the rodeo trail it has no end.
David Griffith had a pretty successful career in rodeo and still runs the ranch near Vanderhoof, but he's become a well-known author thanks to his series of books called the Border Series. And he's been on a book signing tour for a while. So Dave, great to have you here at the McLennan Ranch.
It's a pleasure to talk to another rancher like you, and I know you've been in the radio business for a long time too. It's you're kind of a legend, you.
Really?
Yes, you are.
Where did you hear that?
Oh, no. I've been around long enough to know that.
You've been talking to my wife. Well, you are too, for sure, David. And I'd like to go back maybe to how things kind of got started for you, your early days, where you grew up, what led you to rodeo, and that kind of thing.
Well, you know, some of my earliest memories are cattle and horses, bucking horses. You know, I think one of my first ones, we ranched in Montana back when I was a kid, and you know, one of my first memories was my dad. He saddled up a horse in the morning, and this horse bogged his head and bucked through the yard, and you know, really made a mess of things. And you know, there's something about that. You know, I don't know what. You know, why things hit a kid, but that did. I want to ride bucking horses. I think I was 5 years old.
And your dad made the ride, obviously.
He did. Yeah.
And whereabouts in Montana was that?
Well, it was west of Billings.
Oh yeah, towards Yellowstone Park, kind of.
Yeah, but north of Yellowstone, central Montana.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, a little town called Brygate. But it was years ago. We moved to British Columbia shortly after that. So I'm pretty much a native British Columbia. It's been a lot of years here.
How old were you when you?
I was 6 years old.
Oh gosh, yeah. And where to in BC then?
We moved to Vanderhoof. My family
Right
moved up to Vanderhoof, and you know, back then it was nothing but bush and mud bogs and mosquitoes.
Yeah.
And it was tough going, but a lot of Americans moved into that country at that time. It was, you know, the ag lease programs. It was a way to get land, and for many of us that ended up in the north, that was a big draw.
Yeah. So did you restock the place, or did you bring cattle from Montana?
No. You know, my dad started from scratch. I think he crossed the border with $500 and a load of machinery on an old Diamond T.
My gosh.
It was tough sledding.
Yeah.
And he did it, and then we got into the ranching after I rodeoed for a number of years, and then you know, we ended up on the ranch and carried on.
I've seen some pretty good pictures of you riding saddle broncs. Was that your main event, or
that was my main event? Yeah. It you know, when I went to college at Montana State, and when I was there, I did some other things. I rode bulls and roped some too. But no, saddle broncs kept me from starving to death.
Wow. Well, we'll carry this on in just a couple of minutes then, David, and throw in another one of those good songs when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. David Griffith has struck a chord deep in the hearts of just about everyone who's read his Border Series novels. Rodeo, ranching, the dark side of the drug culture, the very best and the very worst of human nature, it's all in there. He still runs cattle on the ranch near Vanderhoof, BC, and he's visiting our place this week. So you'd have probably ridden with some other well-known names that we...
Oh, I did. Absolutely. You know, the first year that I got my PRCA card, I traveled with Kenny McLean, one of our greats.
Isn't that? Yeah.
You know, to this day, I just feel so privileged to have spent a year with Kenny.
Yeah.
And you know, he was one of the greats. He was an amazing athlete and man.
I remember watching him when I was pretty young, and grew up in Edmonton, and they had what they called the Edmonton Rodeo Champions in the old Edmonton Gardens years ago. That was the first time I saw Kenny McLean. I can't remember what year it was, but there are a lot of legends that came up at that time. I remember seeing Deb Copenhaver and Casey Tibbs even one year, and guys like that. And,
some of the great ones back then.
And then I remember watching Kenny after he was at the scene doing a lot of the calf roping at senior rodeos, and almost every calf roping, well, I guess tie-down roping horse you see now, they've got a tie-down on them. Maybe that's why they call it tie-down roping.
Yeah, that could be.
But not on Kenny. He had just a regular reins and romal, and horse straight up in the bridle, no tie-down, no martingale or anything. And when that loop went around that calf's neck, that horse just buried his hocks, and those reins were slack, like just a real draping on the boy. There's a horseman.
That's true. That's true. I remember that as well. I remember a couple of the horses he rode. And, you know, Kenny was a cowboy in every sense of the word. You know, I remember once he had a yellow horse that he roped calves off, a tremendous horse. And but every once in a while, this horse would bog his head, and of course, he'd even buck Kenny out because you're not ready.
Yeah.
But he rode him, and he roped a lot of calves on that horse.
Isn't that something? Yeah. So were you running the ranch at the same time as you were rodeoing? Or?
No, I wasn't. We lived. We were back in Montana at most of that time that I rodeoed, and of course I started in Canada. They had amateur bronc riding, and I started there, but then we moved back to Montana, and I just was pretty much strictly rodeoing.
Yeah. So how did you develop the ranch then, and what did that kind of come to with?
Cleared a lot of land. We've picked a lot of roots, fought a lot of mosquitoes, and run cows in the meantime.
Yeah. And cow-calf operation, basically, winter the cows? And...
Yes. For a lot of years, that's what we did. We did a cow-calf operation. Now we run yearlings in the summertime. When I started riding, Hugh, that started to take up a lot of time, and not just the riding, because a lot of what I ride is about Mexico and drug cartels, and so I like to spend a good part of the winter researching, and we've spent a lot of time in Mexico. So that doesn't. A cow-calf operation just doesn't really fit with.
Yeah, I can see that all right. Now, I want to talk about something else that a lot of us are experiencing right now, and that's the changes on the range. And, of course, we'll get into what inspired you to become a best-selling novelist, but as far as the changing West, this song from Don Edwards, I think, really sets it up nicely.
I rode across the valley range I hadn't seen for years. The trail was all so sport and strange, it nearly fetched the tears. I had to let 10 fences down, the fussy lanes ran wrong, and each new line would make me frown and hum this morning song. Here I'm stretching up the wire. The urban brand is on the land, I reckon I'll retire. And while progress toots her greedy horn and makes her motor buzz, I thanks the Lord I wasn't born no later than I was. 'Twas good to live when all the sod, without no fence or fuss, belonged in partnership with God, Mother Nature, and to us. Where skylines bound from east to west, and room to go and come, I loved my fellow man the best when he was scattered some. Closer and closer across the wire. Why, there's hardly play to step away to call a man a liar. Their house has locks on every door, their land is in a crate. These ain't the plains of God no more, it's only real estate. When my old soul hunts range and rest beyond the last divide, just plant me in some stretch of west, sunny, lone, and wide. Let cattle rub the tombstone round and coyotes mourn their kin. Let horses come and paw the mound, but don't you fence it in. Far and farther flings the wire, to crowd and pinch another inch, it's all their heart's desire. The world is overstocked with men, and some will see the day when each must keep his little pen, but I'll be far away. while progress toots her greedy horn and makes her motor buzz. Thanks the Lord I wasn't born no later than I was.
The Old Cowman, words by Badger Clark, music written and sung by Don Edwards. And that's something we can both identify with, David. I want to get to what inspired you to kind of do research into the drug cartels and the subjects for your novels and that. But I'd like to know just a little bit more about the ranching days. And did you have some crown grazing leases and permits close by, or did you have to haul cows and calves to your summer range, or how did you work that? Could you trail them? Or?
We did. You know, we've been very fortunate. We've had a range area right out our back gate. And so we never had to haul cattle anywhere. It's been very easy for us. And that's very unusual because we're very close to town. And so, you know, it's the only range area that close to town. And actually, we are losing it this year. It's just, you know, there's settlement all around us now. And
wow.
So it's kind of the end of an era for us.
Yeah.
You know, that range area is gone. And so, you know, now if we wanted to carry on, we would have to find another range area, and it would be a long ways from our back gate, I can tell you.
Yeah. Boy, we've seen that story played out so many times, even in this area. Billy and I managed the cow herd for the Lion's Head Ranch for about 22 years for 4 or 5 different owners, and their Crown Range permit is just about 3 miles up Highest Lake Road. And we would trail cows and calves in the fall all the way from up here, right down to the South Thompson River to the headquarters. Wow. And it would be a good long day, but the calves were big and strong by then, and a beautiful ride. Yeah. And we'd do it with 2 or 3 different bunches. And, oh gosh, in the last, I guess about 5 years ago, I tried to just ride over there and back, and I came across 3 locked gates. Every quarter section has been sold separately and fenced separately, and it's just, you know, that part of it is gone. We're so lucky we can still, you know, trail cattle a lot of places here without having to haul them. But I've seen that, and that's going on everywhere in ranching country.
It's
sad.
Changed so much.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of, for us here, it is. It's a changing of the West. It's a changing of the business. Yeah. And, you know, it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. And still, you know, to me, when I'm out there all by myself, looking for some cows or trailing a dozen pairs someplace and singing an old cowboy song as we're going along there, I think I am riding in the tracks of the pioneers that blazed these trails 100 and some years ago, you know.
Absolutely.
And same with you, you know, there were some legends in that part of the country, you know, Panhandle Phillips and Richmond Hobson, just a little south probably of where you were.
Yes. In fact,
Dude Lavington. And,
a lot of my books are set in that Blackwater country.
Oh, really?
In fact, my first book, you know, Blackwater Crossing, it's down where.
That's where the title came from.
That's
the Blackwater
right.
River.
That's right. The Blackwater River.
For gosh sake.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, we'll have more in just a little while here. I can't wait for that. Baxter Black is next with another cowboy commentary that really nails it. A rodeo song from a rodeo legend, and then the Rangeland News when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan with a little peek at taking out the trash. Ladies and gentlemen and followers of cowboy humor, I have carved another book from my funny bone, guaranteed to tickle your humorous. Sorry. The title is Scrambled Wisdom. Almost isn't is it? Which almost makes sense. Regardless, it's almost $20, only $19.95 plus shipping. Call 800-654-2550 or online at baxterblack.com. Here's a joke. What did he get on his IQ test? Drool. If you're a rancher or farmer who adjoins a state park, BLM ground, or national forest, I expect you are used to picking up after visitors. The sign on the highway should read, "This stretch of public land is kept clean by a local ranch family with better things to do." Well, the ranchers along the Mexican border have their own unique problems. Hundreds of thousands of undocumented illegal aliens that sneak across into the land of plenty every year. Jan and Jim run a desert cow ranch 10 miles north of the border in southeastern Arizona. It's a mom-and-pop outfit. They are their own hired hands. Their land is crisscrossed with trails, not cow trails. The tracks in these trails are primarily the Mexican version of Nike, Adidas, and Goodyear. However, riding through their campground in the daylight is eerie. It's like a deserted KOA next to a county dump on a windy day. There's enough 1-gallon plastic milk bottles to run a trot line from Calcutta to Chesapeake Bay. Plastic garbage bags, small nylon war bags, various articles of clothing, and occasional toys, reminding us that families are involved. "This is less than a week's worth," explained Jan. "I make regular rides out here and put the trash in bags, and I try and keep it clean, but it never ends." Jan and Jim are sympathetic to the illegal aliens. She said, "These are immigrants risking everything to escape grinding poverty and oppression, and sometimes I find something that's pretty good. I assume when the coyote picks them up, they don't have room for all their stuff, so they're forced to choose, to take the jacket and maybe leave the blanket behind." Well, Jan and Jim have no intention of leaving their ranch. Although they are not on speaking terms with their visitors, they don't hassle them. The Border Patrol does that, but they are outnumbered. I jokingly suggested they put up a snack stand, sell pop, Fritos, and jalapenos. Jan laughed. "Well," she said, "I have considered putting out several dozen trash cans." "Well, what you need," I continued, "is to find a use for plastic milk jugs. Maybe pick 'em up at your ranch, wash 'em, fill 'em up with water, and take 'em back across the border. Sell 'em to the next night's travelers." "I see," she said. "So if we can't stop 'em, at least we can teach 'em how to recycle." This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan. Thanks for listening.
We've been talking about some rodeo legends this week, and if the subject is bronc riders, well, let's narrow it down to bronc riders who sing and write good songs. Top of the list has got to be the late Chris Ledoux, but you've also got to consider guys like Wayne Vold, and of course the great Ivan Daines. How about Matt Robertson, Monty Hawkeye Henson, Larry Mahan, and of course the one and only Mel Highland, and here he is.
Stood there in the silence as he packed his gear to go. He'd been home for about 6 months now, there's a rodeo. It's down in Fort Worth, Dallas, he seems anxious to go. I guess it's just in his blood that makes him wanna rodeo. He's chasing dreams of gold buckles, he's paying entry fees. Chasing dreams of gold buckles and making memories. In the fall he was injured, unable to go. He had to sit it out, he missed a lot of rodeo, and it nearly drove him crazy, the chance that he might miss riding for the world title down in Las Vegas. He's chasing dreams of gold buckles, he's paying entry fees. Chasing dreams of gold buckles and making memories. As he walked out the door, he said, "Don't be sore, it's something I gotta do. You've always stood behind me, and you know that I love you. But now I'm feeling healthy, I just gotta go. And I'll be sure and call you right after the rodeo." He's chasing dreams of gold buckles, he's paying entry fees. Chasing dreams of gold buckles and making memories. Stood there in the silence and she just let him go. She knows that it's in his blood that makes him rodeo. Then her tears, they started falling as she watched him drive away. And I know she'll be praying that he'll be okay. He's chasing dreams of gold buckles, he's paying entry fees. Chasing dreams of gold buckles and making memories. He's chasing dreams of gold buckles and making memories.
news of the rangeland, a roundup of news and coming events from around the West.
At the top of page 1, it says input costs seem to be going up. Everything from fuel, baler twine, machinery parts, repairs, fencing supplies, salt and mineral, darn near everything else. But what about prices we get for farm production? Well, kind of up and down. And with more, here's Gary Crawford.
Rising farm prices for most crops and livestock during May, but the overall price index still below last year, almost entirely because of falling livestock prices. That's according to the latest USDA Ag Prices report. Taking a look at some specific commodities, average corn prices during May, $3.67 a bushel, 9 cents higher than April, 22 cents ahead of May a year ago. The all wheat price gaining a dime during May, $5.39 a bushel, $1.34 higher than May 2017. Soybeans, similar story, only gaining a penny in May at $9.84, but that's 55 cents more than May a year ago. Livestock, different story. Hogs during May gaining $6.20 a hundredweight up to 51.5, still over $2 less than producers got May of last year. Likewise, beef cattle prices gaining $1 during May, still bringing $16 a hundredweight less than a year ago. Milk up in April, but half a dollar a hundredweight lower than May 2017. Prices paid by farmers to do business, those went up in May. They're 2% higher than a year ago. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.
First-time competitor Joshua Knight took home the 2018 Extreme Mustang Makeover Championship, as well as the Fan Favorite and Rookie Award at the Kentucky Horse Park in Lexington. With about 100 days, trainers and Mustangs work on bonding, gentling, natural horsemanship methods to showcase what the Mustang can do. And the Mustangs that completed in the Extreme Mustang Makeover for adults were wild mares and geldings 4 to 7 years old that had been living in BLM land off-range corrals. And youth trainers worked with yearling Mustangs for the competition. All the trainers are randomly paired with the horse. Bill Huber of Lipton is the new president of the Saskatchewan Stock Growers Association. He takes over from Shane Yonke of Goldtown, who served for 2 years. And the members passed a dozen resolutions at the meeting, including one to lobby the provincial government to change the Trespass to Property Act, which requires all people entering private land to ask permission, and one asking for a plan to eradicate wild pigs. Members opposed to the current front-of-package labeling proposal recommended by Health Canada and asked the board to lobby the federal government to not allow the terms meat and hamburger on the labels of lab and plant-based protein products. Regulatory changes around veterinary medications now mean a rancher can't just call a vet, explain what's wrong with the animal, and expect a prescription. The two must have a valid veterinarian client-patient relationship to dispense and obtain prescriptions. And how that relationship is established is still kind of murky, according to several who spoke during the recent Saskatchewan Stock Growers Annual Convention. Some ranchers say they only want to see the vet at their place a couple of times a year and wondered if that is enough. Well, veterinarians said they are already short-staffed and bogged down in paperwork. As of July the 1st, higher tariffs on U.S. beef products coming into Canada are in effect. According to Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland, it's a retaliation in response to the U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs. The list includes yogurt, jams, orange juice, and cucumbers as the other agriculture-related items on the list. And of the $12.6 billion in tariffs, Canada plans to tariff $170 million worth of beef products. National Cattlemen's Beef Association Director of International Trade Kent Backus said this in response to the announcement. These retaliatory tariffs were still and are still clearly avoidable, and the unfortunate casualties will be Canadian consumers and America's cattlemen and cattlewomen. We might not know the extent of the damage of these tariffs. We may have our producers, but we believe that cooperation is a better path. Next regular cattle sale at the BC Livestock Co-op in Williams Lake Yards is July the 19th. And among the listings, El Ranch Ventures with 7 Angus Simmental cross cows and 1 bull. Gary Ellis with 70 mixed Angus cross yearlings, about 700 to 900 pounds. Morris and Diane Tuck, a herd dispersal with 10 Hereford Angus cow-calf pairs, 4 steers, 2 heifers, and a bull. And Char Springs Ranch 6 Angus Hereford cows and 4 bulls. And the Gang Ranch will have 90 Angus cows. You can get all the information at bclivestock.bc.ca. And over at the Innisfail Auction Market, regular cattle sales every Wednesday, and the next horse sale will be Saturday, July the 28th. Tack starts selling at 9. Horses start coming through the ring at noon. Get all the details at InnisfailAuctionMarket.com. And we're down to the final item. I can remember back when I was starting colts and putting outside miles on a lot of horses and for the general public. And an old cowboy and horse trainer friend of mine came over to watch for a while. And I was riding a 5-year-old gelding I'd just started. As a matter of fact, I'd put about 2 weeks on him. And I thought, the horse was doing pretty well. So I asked the old cowboy what he thought of the horse. And he just tipped his hat back and he said, well, if things go pretty well okay, I'd say there's a good chance that in 10 years, he'll be 15. Thanks. And that's the Rangeland News. Coming up on the Urban Saddles and Western Wear horse training file, a guy had a good horse he'd ridden for quite a while, and one day, for what seemed like no reason at all, this horse bogged his head and bucked pretty hard when he was riding him. But there was a reason, and you'll find out what it was when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. David Griffith is sitting in today, and we will talk more about his spellbinding Border Series books and what inspired him to write them. And right now, I think my horse wants to say something. Go ahead, Cody.
Now it's time for the Horse Training File, brought to you by Irvine Tack and Western Wear, Canada's largest Western store.
Suit up for summer at Urban Tack and Western Wear. No, I'm not talking boots for the beach, although that would be interesting. I'm talking real summer stuff like sunglasses, sandals, and flip-flops, toys for the kids for those long summer road trips. You'll be surprised what you'll find at Urban's. Jewelry, purses, dishes, collectibles. Hey, all I can say is it's a whole lot of fun. Shopping Urban Tack and Western Wear off exit 305, Highway 2 by Crossfield, open 7 days a week. Well, we've probably all heard the pre-trip check before you get on your horse is important, and the older I get, the more I do. And here's an example of why. A guy I know rides mostly on weekends helping neighbors move cattle. He's got an 8-year-old gelding that's got a lot of energy and is usually pretty reliable. Well, he took some time off work last fall to do more riding. The first day, about mid-October, he saddled up and headed out with 3 other guys to try and locate some cows and calves and bring them home. Now, his horse had not been ridden for about 2 months, but the horse did just fine, and it turned out to be a long, hard day for all of them. Now, the next day, they saddle up early. He's on the same horse. It's his only horse. They'd ridden for about 10 minutes at a walk, and his horse seemed different, more uptight, kind of humpy. But heck, he hadn't bucked for years. He'll settle down, he thought to himself. You'd think after a long, hard ride yesterday, he'd be more settled, though. Well, about then they spotted some pairs down in a draw, making a break. So he rode down the bank, and his horse broke into a lope, and after a few strides he started to pitch. Well, the guy managed to hang on, but it wasn't easy. He got the horse stopped, and when he tried to lunge him in a circle, the horse bucked again pretty hard with the saddle. And an old cowboy with the crew rode up, and he said, "I think I know what's wrong with that pony. Just pull his saddle off, and I'll show you." They unsaddled him, and the old cowboy ran his fingers from the withers along each side of the horse's backbone, and about halfway back the horse winced and dipped his back. You see, that hard ride the day before really made his back sore, and it's hurting him today. Now, if you can remember to do that little test, just run your fingers down the back on each side of his backbone, he'll tell you if his back is sore. And for Urban Saddles and Western Wear, that is the horse training file. Something else that keeps our horses really fit and doing well is a daily feeding of Hoffman's Horse Ration. You can find out all about it at hoffmanshorseration.com. We've been talking about some rodeo legends today, and there sure are some great songs about rodeo, all kinds of them. And here's another one from Canadian country music legend Joy Smith with her band Rodeo Wind.
Snowflakes beat down on the window in the cold of winter's last storm. But here in the light of the cabin, she's happy and safe in his arms. She knows it won't last forever, and worries with spring coming on. Those warm Chinook winds and the gypsy in him, with the green grass of spring he'll be gone. She sees the signs of his yearning. She knows the look in his eyes. It burns like a fever, and she knows he'll leave her. Come the rodeo wind without saying goodbye. He tells her this time it's over. He'll never stray from her side. He really believes when he tells her he's made his last rodeo ride. She can't count the times that she's heard it, and he'll never know of her pain. He won't see her cry, and she'll live a lie till the rodeo wind blows again. She sees the signs of his yearning. She knows the look in his eyes. It burns like a fever, and she knows he'll leave her. Come the rodeo wind without saying goodbye. It burns like a fever, and she knows he'll leave her. Come the rodeo wind without saying goodbye.
Joyce Smith and her husband, band manager and bass player, is another rodeo legend, George Myron. And I should mention that along with the Alberta Country Legends of Country Music and special guest Pete Hicks, they will be at the Old McDonald's Music Festival near Erskine, Alberta, right there by Buffalo Lake on September the 8th. And I'll be there with my Western Spirit Band that same day. And the only way you can get tickets for that is by calling this number, 403-742-6603. And we are also looking forward to being at the 42nd Annual Ivan Danes Country Music Picnic. Goes August 9th to 12th at the Danes Rodeo Ranch near Innisfail, Alberta. And the Western Spirit Band will be on stage Friday evening. Well, David Griffith has been sitting here since we started, and the first book in your Border series of novels, Blackwater Crossing. So what is basically the theme of that book, for example?
Well, it's about a guy named Lonnie Bowers. He's a rodeo cowboy, approaching the end of his career. He struggles with his marriage, and then his best friend is kidnapped by a Mexican drug cartel, and it's Lonnie's search to save his marriage, to save his career, and to find his friend in Mexico.
Why would a drug cartel kidnap a rodeo guy?
Well, his friend is a pilot, and they took his plane as well as him.
Oh, okay.
They needed somebody to fly drugs, and they still do that.
Wow.
With some success.
Yeah.
They have better ways now.
So what inspired you to delve into that subject?
Oh wow, that's a kind of a long answer in a way. Yeah. One of the things back when we were in the cow business, you remember the days when we had BSE and when our
2003.
Market, our market just crashed.
Yeah. U.S. border slammed shut.
Oh, absolutely, overnight.
All these cattle that we could not So.
You know, we looked for some other enterprises, and you know, at the time I was training a lot of horses, and and we did some other things. But one of the things we did, we got into some real estate ventures, and I ended up buying an apartment building. And you know, if you believe the late night TV shows, well, that's an instant ticket to riches. Well, the problem was this apartment building that I bought had more drugs and drug dealers than anything else. And you know, I didn't know anything about drugs. I was just a dumb farm kid, really, when it came to drugs. And
now
so,
all of a sudden you're a landlord.
Exactly. Yeah. And I have all this drug problem, and I don't even know where they're coming from or how to deal with these guys, or how to get rid of them and clean this building up. So, you know, that just led from one thing to another. And, you know, it gave me a real curiosity, like, where does all this stuff come from? You know, and this stuff's devastating to our communities, and you know, to this real estate venture, we didn't lose the building, but you know, we eventually skinned out by the skin of our teeth. But it was a real learning experience, and like I say, it just gave me a real curiosity, like, where's this stuff come from? So I started writing, and this, it was just kind of natural to this became a part of these fictional story.
Well, this is way too interesting to leave there, so David will be back next week, and you'll be amazed at what his research has discovered. One of the questions we'll explore: has the drug culture invaded the sport of rodeo, and so much more.
He was born to ride the rough ones. He'll live and die a tough one, but there's a whole lot more to him than you can see. He's simply complicated, overly underrated. He's everything a cowboy should be. He grew up in Wyoming, left his family and his home, and he hit the road to make a better life. At times he gets so lonely, but the adrenaline and coffee keep him searching for another bronc to ride. From Houston out to Cheyenne, with no guarantee that he'll win, just another chance to feed the fire that's burning deep inside. He'll pay to ride the devil, win a buckle for his trouble, then go searching for another bronc to ride. He's one win short of Vegas, but he knows that he'll make it, 'cause he's vowed to let his heart on to the money and the glory, and the chance to have his story written into a damn good cowboy song. From Houston out to Cheyenne, with no guarantee that he'll win, just another chance to feed the fire that's burning deep inside. He'll pay to ride the devil, win a buckle for his trouble, then go searching for another bronc to ride. He was born to ride the rough ones. He'll live and die a tough one, but there's a whole lot more to him than you can see. He's simply complicated, overly underrated. He's everything a cowboy should be. He's everything a cowboy should be.
Terry Brown, and coming up, our classic Song of the West and the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. This is where we look back at one of those classic Western songs from the misty sands of time, and this one written by Tim Spencer and recorded by the Sons of the Pioneers on an EP, extended play. Remember those? In 1943 and released by RCA in 1950. And I'm pretty sure it came from or was written for a Western movie, but I can't seem to find out which one. But, you know, there is just something about being a ways from ranch headquarters, riding a good horse that knows his job, trailing a group of quiet cows and calves up a winding mountain trail, letting the cattle set the pace. And if you've been there, you've probably felt the deep sense of joy and peace that settles down deep in your soul. And a song like this might roll easily through your mind. It's the Sons of the San Joaquin with Tim Spencer's Slow-Moving Cattle.
Slow-moving cattle, you're moving mighty slow. Don't you know you gotta go home? Slow little doggies, you're trailing way behind. Don't you know you'll never find your home? Just for you, green pastures wait ahead. There at the home corral. But for me there's something else instead. It's my blue-eyed gal who's waiting. Slow-moving cattle, move on your lazy bone. Don't you know you gotta go? Trailing way behind. Don't you know you'll never find your home? Just for you, green pastures wait ahead. There at the home corral. But for me, there's something else instead. It's my blue-eyed gal who's waiting. Slow-moving cattle, move on your lazy bones. Whoopie-toddle, waddle on home. Slow-moving cattle, hurry on home.
Love that beautiful, pure Western sound of Joey Mescalin's accordion there with the Sons of the San Joaquin. Got another fine poem from the late Larry McWhorter this week, and it's recited so well here by another legendary poet, Jesse Smith. It's called Through the Tackroom Door.
Through the Tackroom Door by Larry McWhorter. You'll find a ranch museum through the open tackroom door of any place where men still joust the cow. A living, breathing antique shop where past and present meet, where things ain't changed too much from then to now. A saddle's still a saddle, a bit is still a bit, although the years might bring on new design. A cowboy goes through time warp when he climbs upon a horse to wage a war of wits with wily kine. Every cack upon the rack has its own tale to tell of days when it was oiled and in its prime. Generations like to spar, but in the end each knows we have to make a hand in our own time. Scratch and stitch mean stories. You may translate history of how the little battle scars were earned. The battle of experience bestowed upon the old is to teach the up-and-coming what they've learned. And so it goes down through the years as generations pass. And in my mind, I kind of like to see a little saddle setting proud upon some old scarred-up hull, like Junior setting on his papa's knee.
Well, thank you so much for riding along this week, and I sure hope you can join us right here next week at the same time. And as always, I'd like to thank Mark and Kathy McMillan, the Spirit of the West support crew. And if you need parts for a tractor, any make, any year, see Mark's page, bctractorparts.com. And there's always great reading, of course, in every issue of Canadian Cowboy Country Magazine. Find it at your favorite newsstand or subscribe by going to cowboycountrymagazine.com, or you can call 1-800-943-7336. Till next week, I'm Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.